I'd like to start this episode with a small disclaimer. Today's episode is about financial accounts structure and OPSEC related to finances. When I recorded it, I focused primarily on US-based services and banks. However, I do realize that we have listeners in Europe and Australia and other places. So for future episodes, I will try to cover that as well, or I will be doing deep dives into subject matter similar. For example, today's episode's about financial accounts and how you structure them. And one of the big topics I talk about is mass payment card services. We'll have a future episode specifically diving into various services for mass payment cards and mass payments. And we will go over different options for European bank systems, Australian bank systems, maybe Japan, and alternatives also inside the United States. But for today's episode, I focus mostly on US-centric points of view. And I hope that you can still take these concepts and apply them to yourself wherever you are. Enjoy the episode. In March of 2025, the United States Federal Trade Commission, also known as the FTC, released data showing that consumers had reported losing more than $12.5 billion to fraud the previous year, 2024. And this represents a 25% increase over the previous year. Now, for those of you who are listening who are not inside of the United States, I will give you a small description of what the FTC does. The Federal Trade Commission's mission statement on their website reads as follows. The FTC's mission is protecting the public from deceptive or unfair business practices and from unfair methods of competition through law enforcement, advocacy, research, and education. Now, my experience with the government is that usually what they say they're supposed to be doing is typically the opposite of what they actually do. So the way that translates to me is they are there to protect the businesses from getting ripped off and not the customers. Now, caring about the customers getting ripped off, I believe, is probably an unintended consequence or a symptom of them doing their job protecting the businesses. However, we still have the protection, regardless of my opinion of the government's role in it. Now, consumers reported in this FTC release losing the most amount of money to investment scams. And the second most common reported fraud category was from online shopping issues. And this brings me to today's subject. We're going to take a deep dive into how to structure your financial accounts in a way that could help reduce loss and reduce risk in the event of a compromise. And hopefully you will be able to take some of this information and apply it to your own personal accounts and be able to gain a level of security and further understanding about how to apply some of these techniques as a discipline to the rest of your life and how you manage your online presence. In 2025, I'm not here to try to convince anybody why privacy is important. If it's not important to you by this point in time, nobody is going to convince you otherwise, including me or anybody that's in your friend or family group that does value privacy. The only thing that is going to convince you otherwise is when you get your money stolen. And unfortunately, many of us who are privacy-focused individuals, we have plenty of friends and family that either A, do not care about privacy, or B, did not at one point and now do because they had a hardship due to they are loose security posture, and they most likely lost some money. Everybody changes their opinion once they get impacted and once they get their account compromised and lose control over something important. And everybody agrees that their money is one of the most important things for them to maintain control of. Welcome back to the OPSEC Podcast. I am your guide, Alan Pace, and today we are going to apply the OPSEC process to our financial accounts and go over a strategy that I like to use and recommend to people on how to structure your financial accounts for different purposes, such as savings versus a checking account that you use that has internet-facing capabilities that you put out on the internet for shopping and whatnot, versus an account that you do not have any external access to via the internet other than logging in. I'll explain some of that later. But for now, let's go ahead and break down the OPSEC process related to financial accounts. So as a quick review, the OPSEC process involves identifying critical information, analyzing threats, analyzing vulnerabilities, assessing the risks, applying countermeasures, and then periodically reviewing your process, countermeasures, and security posture. In step one, we're going to identify critical financial information. Now, what that's going to include is for you to grab a pen and paper, grab maybe start a list on a spreadsheet list on your computer, ensure that it is secured not in a public cloud format. And what you're going to do is you're going to write down the financial data that is most important to you. You're going to start by listing your accounts, bank accounts, routing numbers if you want, credit card data, credit card numbers, PIN numbers. I would not recommend placing all of this information in one document. You just need to make a note of it and where they're located. So, for example, if you have a checking account from Wells Fargo Bank, you're going to write down Wells Fargo checking account. If you have a credit card through a company like Chase, you would write down Chase credit card. That's really all you need to know. It's essentially a guide for you to look at. You don't need to put all of your private details on this list. Additional accounts such as investment portfolios or brokerage accounts or reoccurring payment service accounts such as utilities or subscriptions can also go down on there. I would place those on there because they are directly connected to your checking account most likely. So they charge out of your checking account. So make a list of your accounts and make a list of everything that pulls money or gets charged out of your account. Next is step two. We're going to analyze the threats. Now, most people have the same threat profile. Most people have to worry about basic cyber criminals, identity theft and fraud, phishing scams from the internet, impersonation scams such as the notorious fake Microsoft tech support calls from the India scam companies that pretend to be Microsoft and have you transfer a bunch of money to them. There's also a bit of a resurgence in some of the old school thief opportunities like dumpster diving, searching through people's trash, stuff like that. Unfortunately, some of us have to deal with insider threats at home. If you have a sketchy roommate or you have a family member that's struggling with addiction, they have a high probability or a potential to maybe steal money from you or steal your bank card and use it to buy stuff. Step three is analyze the vulnerabilities. What you are going to do next is you're going to look at your list of critical information in your accounts, and you're going to have an honest conversation with yourself about the security whether you have two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication on every one of these accounts, or some have it and others don't. Weak passwords or shared passwords is also a huge mistake that most people make. A lot of people continue to use the same password across all different accounts, including a Google email account and a bank account, which is a significant vulnerability. More advanced vulnerabilities would be something like contracting malware through a phishing attempt over an email. I'm clicking on a link in an email and it installs malware on your computer, and that malware is a keylogger, and they log all of your keystrokes, your username, passwords to pretty much everything that you log into on your computer. Physical mail theft and discarded bill statements are still a threat and can see an uptick of occurrences around the holidays especially. Oftentimes you'll hear about a credit card theft scam where people are going down neighborhood streets, checking mailboxes for pre-approved credit card applications, and then stealing that and finishing the process of the credit card application for the person and taking that card and using it for themselves. And the last example of a vulnerability that I have on my list is one of my favorites to talk about, and that is oversharing financial activities publicly. Now, in the social media era that we currently live in, there is a common activity of showing off whatever you have on social media, creating a lifestyle image that may or may not represent reality. Everybody wants to be a social media star. Unfortunately, a lot of the more advanced criminals have the capability of taking your pictures, your images, or your videos and geolocating your home or your yard or wherever you're taking these pictures and videos and finding your home, and then you are a target by a stranger who you've never met. Stop sharing on social media. That's the only thing I can say to that. It's not worth it ever under any circumstances. Step 4 is we're going to assess the risks. Now we're going to prioritize vulnerabilities by combining the likelihood and the impact. And what I mean by that is you are going to look at risk versus impact. High risk, high impact is going to be the highest priority. And that would include, for example, you're going to look at your bank accounts and you're going to say online bank accounts without multi-factor authentication and weak passwords. Those are two big negatives on the security side. We're going to have the high risk, high impact because it's easier for them to gain access to that account and then drain whatever money is being stored in it. High risk, medium impact would be an activity such as using public Wi-Fi to check your credit card balance. Medium risk, high impact would be something like leaving bill statements in the trash or throwing away the monthly bank statement and leaving your trash out in a high traffic area. A person comes around and rifles through that trash. They find a bank statement for your checking account, and they could have access to your name, your address, your account number, as well as a list of whatever's on there. So the information of the charges on there can tell them a whole different set of details, such as where you shop and where you frequently are spending time and spending money. Low risk, low impact would be something considered occasional checking small investment apps on your mobile device. I personally do not have any financial apps on my mobile device, strictly because mobile devices are A, the most stolen electronic devices, and they are B, the easiest for us to lose. So I don't want to have any financial connection on my mobile device. So I take the hard route, which is I get on my laptop like an old man and I log in through the browser to every single one of my financial accounts without exception. Step 5 is we are going to start applying countermeasures to some of these vulnerabilities. You're going to hear some reoccurring solutions, multi-factor or two-factor authentication. I am of the strong belief that anything related to money needs to have two-factor authentication, no exceptions. Use unique and strong passwords or passphrases and change them as often as you can. Now, you don't want to make it overly complicated. You don't want to make it complicated for yourself and end up losing access and having to go through the restoring recovery process. And you don't want to make it too difficult for family members or they will find ways around it. So using a decently strong password with two-factor authentication puts you already significantly ahead of the curve and ahead of most people. And ensuring that those passwords are not reused on other accounts will dramatically increase your security stance. And the reason I push these things as so important is because you don't want to have one account compromised and then that criminal takes your credentials from one account and then performs a thing called credential stuffing. What they do is they use the same email and the same password, and they are able to gather if that works or not. Now, it might have a different multi-factor code attached to it, which if it doesn't, and you reuse a password, they get access to any account that they are able to find that has the same credentials. Multi-factor authentication at least provides a stopgap in process of them being able to authenticate onto other accounts. Other digital countermeasures include behavioral changes, such as avoiding performing financial transactions or logging into financial accounts on public networks or unsecured networks, not clicking on links in emails. If you get an email that's got a sense of urgency attached to it related to an Amazon purchase and it's an emergency and you need to click here to check this thing or it's not going to ship out or whatever the case might be, that's a common thing that criminals do is they craft an email related to an account that has publicly been leaked that they know that you have an account attached to, and they craft a fake email that has a convenient link for you to log in. And once you do that, you are giving them your credentials. Now, on to physical security, some strategies that you can employ would be opt for all electronic billing. Turn off all paper copies. That way there is nothing coming from your banks or your financial institutions to your mailbox. And therefore there's nothing for them to steal related to account statements or bills or whatever. One strategy that I also employ and do not compromise on is I use secure mailboxes, either a P.O. box or a private mailbox, a PMB, such as a USPS secure mailbox, which allows you to get items shipped to those locations and not to your home location. That is a thing that is foreign to most people, especially in the United States these days, is not getting things delivered to your door. I do not do that at all. I never put my home address on any delivery of any products ever. And what that does is that allows me the satisfaction of not having my personal home location breached if a company has a data breach that has my shipping information. What they get instead is they get a P.O. box, and therefore tracking my physical location to my account information is a bit more difficult. It's not impossible, but most criminals are looking for the easy path and low-hanging fruit. So they're not going to pay much attention unless I'm being specifically targeted. If you are a person that's being specifically targeted, that's a different story. What we're talking about here is mass quantity data breaches and them being able to apply that information to a person or location. So one thing to consider is from now on, moving forward, start changing all of your accounts to not include your home address. Instead, include secure mailbox or P.O. box. And you will have that layer of security for home delivery, as well as financial accounts being associated with your actual home address. The next set of recommendations is related to behavior or social interaction with friends and family members or your inner circle. One of the most difficult things for people going down the road of privacy is to make these changes and then try to explain or justify them to your friends and family members in a manner that they understand and respect. Many of us who have been at this for years obviously have the ongoing tinfoil hat joke, and I've just embraced that over the years. But like I said at the beginning, is 2025. There is no real reason for anybody to need convincing anymore. And if they do not take this seriously, then they're making that choice. I personally think that it is a choice of remaining ignorant, and it's also extremely irresponsible. But that's not my problem. It's your problem if you choose that. And when you get your accounts compromised, then, that's when usually they want your help. So referring to the cliche of the weakest link thought process, you can apply that to your inner circle. Now, if you're only as strong as your weakest link, means that your friends and family members have an extremely weak security posture related to anything, but especially financials, then you could possibly be impacted by that. Now, most of us don't share our financial account information with very many friends and family members, so I don't believe that that's a humongous threat. But why take the chance? I usually make it a pretty strict policy to share minimal information related to anything financial with anybody for that reason. There is only a few people who know how to gain access to my accounts in the event of an emergency, and that is it. And finally, you want to be able to establish a schedule of regularly reviewing bank and credit card statements, looking for unauthorized purchases, unauthorized activities, set up notifications in these accounts to have an email or a text sent to you if a suspect charge is made or a login from a different location is made. Another thing that you can do is go down the rabbit hole of freezing your credit on all of the credit agencies. Therefore, new credit cards cannot be opened in your name unless you get online or on the phone and unfreeze your credit for a specific amount of time in order for them to process the new accounts. That is an extremely valuable tool that can be used to prevent a stolen identity and identity theft. It's also a thing that I am very curious about. To me, it should be a default frozen, not default open. But the credit agencies don't operate that way. It's default open instead of default frozen. So they require each one of them to be called or emailed in order to freeze your account that is related to your identity through your social security number. And the final step, step 6, is the continuous review process. And what that means to individuals like us going through our financial account OPSEC would be you're going to revisit the OPSEC plan every 3 to 6 months or after a major life change. Most people that are cognizant of their credit are checking their credit report once a year. Twice a year is better. It's a really good and easy way to do it if you just establish a plan, doing it every 6 months with your credit report. So when you check your credit report, you pull your credit, you look for anything new or unauthorized. And once you get that sorted out, assuming everything looks good, then you review all of your financial accounts at the same time, and it's done. You mark it off on your calendar. Hopefully it's a encrypted calendar such as Proton calendar. And then you wait for the next time for the reminder to pop up to audit your accounts again. All right. Well, that was nearly a half hour of ranting. I hope it wasn't too boring. What we're going to get into next is what I like to call the onion strategy. Now, when I'm talking to friends, family members, clients, or whatever about privacy strategies, it's the easiest way to get through to somebody is the security of their money. That's why I chose to do this episode, like I mentioned before. When we set up our financial accounts, most people don't think about it. Most people don't think about how it's structured, how it looks from an attack vector. I like to have everything layered, and I call it the onion strategy because it comes from the security onion thought process, which is you peel back a layer and it's a separate piece from the layer underneath it. And then you peel back another layer. And those layers are not only on top of each other, but they're also isolated pieces. So what I have here is the structure of the financial accounts. And I'll try to describe it to you as best as possible. And maybe once we get show notes up, I'll put up a PDF file or something so people can see it in a block diagram style format. But right now, I'm just going to read it off to you. I built it on a spreadsheet, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers. And what that means is you have layer 1, primary bank account. Layer 2 is your investment and savings layer accounts. Layer 3 is a secondary bank account. Layer 4 is everything internet facing, masked credit cards, crypto, what have you. And I'll go through those individually one at a time and try to explain them in a way that makes sense. So starting with layer 1, layer 1 is your primary bank account. It is structured for income only. So most people have one job, and you have automatic deposit from that job, and it goes into your checking account every 2 weeks. And all of your bills charge out of that checking account every month. You pay rent out of it, all of your money in and out of the same account. I want to break that idea out of your head because that one account is a monolith. And if you have something that's a monolith that you rely on, it's a single point of failure. Single points of failure are catastrophic to most people when it's related to the thing that is their livelihood, which allows them to eat and feed their family, which is your checking account. So start thinking about it in a structured, isolated manner. Layer 1, primary bank account, income only. I have no debit card on that account. All right, so I'm going to go back to the example of Wells Fargo Bank, let's say, for example, which I don't recommend as a bank. They're terrible. All of your money coming in goes there. You have no activated debit card. Therefore, you have less opportunity for that that debit card to be compromised. You're not paying bills with it. You're not using it at the store. You're not making purchases on it. That debit card number has never been used. When I set up my account in this way, they sent me a debit card. I did not activate it, and I shredded it immediately. Now, you only connect this primary account to other financial accounts. No connection to internet shopping or services or anything of the sort at all. It goes only to investment and savings accounts and then your secondary bank account. And that brings us to layer 2, which is the investment and savings accounts. So if you have a savings account that is also with the primary bank account, that is okay. A lot of people also have investment accounts with other firms such as Vanguard or Robinhood or whatever. The point is those accounts are the only accounts that are directly tied to your primary bank account. And you take the primary bank account that receives your income and you push money out to these other places appropriately. You can do it manually, or you can set up automatic allotments to where every payday it pushes this many dollars to your investment account, this many to your savings account, and then it pushes this many dollars to your secondary checking account. Now, the layer 2 investment and savings account, they only receive money from your primary account. And if possible, they should be with a different bank or a different investment firm. Also, not used in any capacity with internet services or purchasing at all. The next layer, layer 3, is the secondary bank account, and that is the public-facing account. This is the account that you use to make purchases with. It's the account you use to pay bills. You have a debit card that's activated that you carry with you. Now, I have a strategy with the debit card to where I do not use it for online purchases. That debit card number is never plugged into any website ever. I use the debit card only for cash withdrawals from an ATM. And then the secondary bank account, the strategy here is to only put enough money in that covers your purchases and the requirements for your purchases and services that get charged to that account. For all online online purchases, I use a masked credit card service such as privacy.com. So I have a privacy.com account that has a masked credit card for every single individual website. And it sounds tedious, but let me explain if you're unaware of what masked credit cards provide. They provide a level of control and security that I believe is unmatched. And the way it works is you sign up with a privacy.com account and then you attach your bank account to it. In this case, it would be your secondary bank account. And then you have the ability from that point forward to create virtual cards. And say you sign up for Netflix, you create a Netflix account, and then you have a Netflix specified card, and it can only be used with Netflix. And you can set a spending limit, or you can turn it off and kill the card completely, and it can never be charged again. I'm a firm believer in the aspect that we as consumers and as the owners of these accounts should have complete and utter control. In the example of a debit card, you put a debit card on all these services. These services can continuously charge you, and you have to tell them to stop or ask them to stop. And we have all experienced this where sometimes they don't stop and they charge you again. And then you have to go prove why they shouldn't have charged you. Oftentimes it's unintentional, but sometimes it's intentional. And then you have to go prove why this is a guilty party. This is essentially them stealing from you. With a privacy.com account, you set up Netflix and you decide you don't want to use Netflix anymore. You turn off the card. If they accidentally charge you again, it just gets denied. It's that simple. Or you set a monthly spending limit or an annual spending limit. It's a phenomenal tool for control of your own money. Also, one of my favorite things is that privacy.com cards are vendor locked. So once I use it one time with Netflix, it can never be used again for anything other than Netflix. So if a data breach happens and that card number gets leaked and sold, and some criminals try to recreate it by reprinting a card and putting that number on the stripe and then charging it on something else on the internet, it just gets automatically denied. Not a problem. I can disable it or delete it with one click in my privacy.com account. You simply cannot do this with a debit card or a credit card. It just doesn't work that way. So this has been an extremely long-winded explanation of layer 3, but the secondary bank account is critical in that manner that it only receives money from your primary account, and that you attach these third-party products or services to it only. And in that case, that bank account doesn't hold all of your money. It doesn't contain your entire portfolio of assets. It has only the amount. It's used as a spending account, right? So moving down the layers, we have layer 4, which I had already previously mentioned and explained, which is the mass payment card service or something similar to that. Or this only applies for people who are into cryptocurrency. Crypto exchange account would also be considered a layer 4 use in this structure because you are directly connecting your secondary bank account to it and you are using it to exchange funds in a certain way. So layer 4 would consist of something like a mass credit card service or a cryptocurrency exchange account service. And then moving down to layer 5, which is not going to apply to most people, would be cryptocurrency wallets, hot wallet, cold wallet, whatever you use. And that's where you transfer your cryptocurrency out of your exchange account into a wallet that you control. But we're not going to go into that today. That's outside of the scope of today's conversation. So I'll try to do a quick review and wrap this up. We got the onion strategy for financial accounts. Layer 1, primary account, primary bank account, checking account that receives money from your income only. No debit card. Only transfers to your other financial accounts. Layer 2, investment and savings accounts. Only receives money from your primary account and theoretically would be different banks than your primary account. Layer 3, secondary bank account, that is the public-facing account or the spending account, like I like to call it. And that is the one where you have a activated functioning debit card. If you're taking my advice fully, then I would say only use that for ATM cash withdrawals and use everything else that's online purchases and the services used through the primary service that you choose as a mass payment card service, such as privacy.com. That's the one I use. A lot of people use it. It's one of the most reliable out there. I know there's several other ones, but I've not used them, so I can't speak to them. That's layer 4. And then also the crypto, if you want to go down that rabbit hole, then you can add that to the bottom layers of this structure. Well, that was a lot of information. So I hope it wasn't too difficult to digest. That in a nutshell, not a nutshell, in a long-winded rant and explanation, that is my discipline and strategy that I use for my financial accounts. That is my OPSEC discipline and my structured strategy on how I layer my accounts, and I try to adapt the security through obfuscation or security through isolation thought process when I'm using and configuring how I transfer, receive, and store money. And I use multiple different accounts to do it. And now today, you guys understand this, and hope that people start applying this and thinking about this type of strategy and this as a discipline and make changes. Think about it on your own. Think about your own needs. This is only what I do. It might not be what you need, but I think it's a pretty good way for most people to dramatically increase their security profile and the safety of their money without having to do too many ridiculous things. But everybody's different. Everybody has different needs. And also everybody has different access to various resources. Not everybody wants to have 4 or 5 bank accounts. I understand that. But start thinking about it as a layering situation and come up with your own plan and then put it into place. But There is a few non-negotiables when it comes to money. That is multi-factor authentication. If a bank does not provide it, they are not up to speed. They don't get to have my business. I take my business elsewhere. Multi-factor authentication is one of the biggest stop points for fraud or unauthorized access. And what I mean by multi-factor authentication, I do not mean sending code through text or through email. I mean through either a hardware key like a YubiKey or an app like Authy or Google Authenticator or whatever. Any of them are better than nothing. But the text message version of two-factor authentication is not secure, and neither is email. So I try to avoid those at all costs. Strong passwords, strong financial hygiene and digital hygiene around financial accounts. Get your credit frozen. Go through, start auditing these things. Take them seriously. One mistake can really ruin a person's life. So I hope this has been informative and helpful. And thank you for joining me again and listening to me rant on like a crazy person. And hopefully you come back. This has been another episode of OPSEC Podcast, and I am Alan Pace. Thanks for joining me. Have a good one.